Jesus told us that we should not be using babbling prayers. What exactly did he mean by this? Well, stay tuned to today's brief Bible study, and we'll try to figure it out together. Hi, this is Pastor Mark Pierce with Church Requel. Welcome to today's Bible study, number 140, for this Tuesday, May the 26th. The topic of today's thinking and talking is Babbling Prayer. Babbling Prayer. Before we get babbling on about prayer, just want to let you know that today I'm at the Kingwood Center again. I'll be here today and again tomorrow. It's just a very beautiful day, a very hot day today, but just a great time to be out. And I hope that you also are enjoying this nice summer weather if you happen to be in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, let's take our Bibles today and turn to Matthew chapter 6. And today we're going to take a look at verses 7 and 8. Matthew chapter 6, verses 7 and 8, which reads this way. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. Now, these are the words that Jesus is giving us before He gives us His model prayer, what many people know as the Lord's Prayer. Here and in the study that we had yesterday, though, before Jesus gets to that, He's giving us some basic principles of praying. You might remember from yesterday that Jesus had just finished telling His disciples not to pray to be seen by others, but to go into their very private room on the most inside of the inside, if they could, even maybe a prayer closet, and close the door behind them. Well, today, Jesus wants to give another principle in these two verses, in verses 7 and 8. And that principle is this, that prayer should be a conversation with God. That prayer should be a conversation with God. He says in the English Standard Version, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do. Well, what in the world does he mean by heaping up empty phrases? The actual word here, the key word in the Greek, is batalagoe, which is to say use many meaningless words, to babble, or to use vain repetitions. Now, this is an interesting word because it's the only place in the New Testament, in fact, the only place in the whole Bible that we see this word used. And frankly, it's not used too much in the ancient Greek language either. So scholars are a bit not exactly sure what this word means because there's not a lot of other references to it. They believe that it means to use many meaningless words, to babble, to use vain repetition. The reason that they think this is because this Greek word sounds an awful lot like another word that sounds very similar, which has the meaning of stammer. So it would be kind of like someone's using a sound recognition, as if we're trying to stammer out a meaningless phrase before God. To give you some idea of how English translators have used this, the King James Version says, do not use vain repetitions as the heathen do. The NASB says, do not use meaningless repetition as the Gentiles do. The New Century Version, NCV, says, don't be like those people who don't know God. The Holcomb Christian Standard Bible says, don't babble like the idolaters. I think from these two verses we get really two big ideas here from Jesus. The first is that it's not the quantity of your words that count. And this idea of saying it over and over again is not really going to get you anywhere. Some people think that by heaping up a lot of different words, or maybe even using a lot of different names of God, that they'll eventually get a word or a name that connects. Remember, one of the things that Jesus says is don't do it like the Gentiles do. We might be thinking here of the Greeks and the Romans who had many different gods. They certainly didn't know which one God might be the God that they needed to talk to on any particular day. So it's possible that they might have had the habit of using many different names for God, hoping eventually to connect with the right one. But Jesus is saying, hey, you don't need to do that because you know the real God. He is the genuine thing. He's the genuine person, I should say. The only true God, the Father, the Abba, Daddy, that he refers to in several different places. The other big idea here for us is that it's not only a matter of us knowing God, but it's also a matter that God knows us. And here's the important part. He knows us before we even ask. He knows what we need before we even ask. He knows us better than what we even know ourselves. Jesus says that God, unlike the gods of the Roman or the Greeks, that this God, the true God, really does know us, and that if we are in relationship with him, that we will really know him as well. And thus we can have this calm trust in the Father, in this Abba Father. And so, as a result, we need to address him only in that way, and that he would give us all the necessary things that any father would want to provide for his children. But again, it's the issue of, are we really his children? And are we really praying with the trust and the confidence that we know to have, if that is a relationship that we have with him? So one of the things that I think we need to ask is, what about this idea of praying prayers that have already been pre-written? I think there's certainly in many evangelical circles today a bias against using prayers that have already been given. The idea that many people have is that in order for prayer to be authentic, in order for us to have true conversation with God, that the prayer needs to be something that is spontaneous. But I don't think Jesus here is necessarily saying that we can't use existing, pre-known, pre-written prayer. The question is, what is on our mind when we pray it? And are we doing it in such a way, with such an attitude, that we can focus truly upon God and lead ultimately into a conversation with God? For some people, especially those who struggle with this idea of entering into the presence of the deity and at the same time being able to just speak off the cuff, well, let's face it, there's a lot of folks that frankly would have a difficulty speaking off the cuff with anyone. And so having some kind of a model prayer to lead them and to guide them can actually be a beneficial thing. The question is, are we simply repeating it, babbling it, without thinking what it means, without saying what really is on our heart? If we use prayer in the right way, it could lead us, and this is the key, it could lead us into a confidence and a conversation with God in our prayer life. Tomorrow, when we come back together, we're going to take a look at the beginning of the model prayer that Jesus gives us. So you make sure you come back. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.